why don't we do this? Why don't we do a quick round of intros here? So Benita, I'll start with you. And of course, I love your tagline on LinkedIn. And Stephen, I don't know if you had a chance to look, but it says bridging the gap between technology and people by positioning value-based return as a key business driver. Love that.
Well, awesome. And, I wrote that there and, wasn't quite sure if anyone was going to ever read it. So I'm glad to hear that you read it. Loved it.
I sure did. And I loved the line, bridging the gap between technology and people. That's where we're going, right? Is bridging that gap, and really not just with people, but in business too, which includes the people. So I did read it and I loved it. In fact, I copied and pasted it.
Awesome.
Oh, but Benita, I'll turn it over to you for a quick intro, and then we'll go to Stephen, and we'll probably just kick it off right at the hour.
Absolutely. So y'all know the name, Benita Hyman. I'm Director Enterprise Services in the IT department at Norfolk Southern. And so that title just means I do a little bit of everything here at Norfolk Southern, but I'm responsible for the full end user computing lifecycle, all the support services, all of the back-end support for the hardware and the software. So I've got, as far as support services, I've got our level 1, level 2, and level 3 staff. I've also got our mobility operations group. Not sure how much you all know about Norfolk Southern, but we've got a huge mobile first strategy and several initiatives going on. So my team supports the operations side of that for all the mobile devices and the MDM. And then, of course, I've got building technology, all of our smart building technology and conference room technology as well. So anything that from the technology perspective that has an impact on the end user and their productivity pretty much falls in my area.
You're busy. I think you need a longer tagline.
I am. I first started working with the Phunware team when I was manager of building technology systems. I was brought in on what we called, Project Fusion to lead our smart building initiative. So I helped us build out our vision, strategy, and roadmap for our smart building initiative for the Norfolk Southern campus.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I didn't know all that, so I appreciate that. Stephen, just so you know, too, Benita, I have had a chance to talk with Stephen quite a few times over the last few weeks. So I'll turn it over to him for an intro, and we'll kick it off here.
Hey, nice to meet you. Yeah, it sounds like you need a very good team around you to do all of that work. That's a pretty broad portfolio.
It sure is.
Well, good, and glad to know we're somewhat neighbors here. Most of the time I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, you're in Atlanta?" I'm like, "Yeah." And when you said south of Atlanta, that's always like, "Yeah, I'm south of the airport a little ways," and people just don't really know where it's at. So good to meet somebody that's down in the area. So yeah, Stephen Jenkins. I am the CTO over our workplace business unit. So we have basically inside Diversified, we're known for really like 3 different things at the highest level, right? We have media and broadcast that we do, production studios like NBC and all that, as well as like we did the Georgia Dome, the Halo up top, right? The new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Then we have our digital, which does like IPTV, digital signage and things of that nature. And then workplace is kind of everything inside of the intelligent workplace. So conference rooms, high-end LED, experiential event spaces, auditoriums. But we also do structured cabling, electronic security, and all of that, right? So I am looking at like kind of where as a company we should be going in some adjacent technologies. That led me to speaking with Phunware, right? And I've been tracking Phunware for about 2 years now, right before the pandemic and through the pandemic. And, I love the idea of the intelligent workplace, smart building, smart office. There's a little bit of difference in, I think, how you define the two, whether you own the building, you sublease, or you lease the building, you're sublease, and how do you build that out? But the story that they told me about Norfolk Southern really intrigued me because you're actually doing it, right? So that's what kind of led to this. I'm excited to kind of hear from you and ask you some questions today. And thank you again for taking the time. I know you're obviously really busy, so to take 30 minutes to speak is great.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you, Stephen. And I see Dylan joined. Dylan, we just were doing a quick round of intros. If you'd like to jump in there.
Hey guys, yeah, Dylan here. I'm just kind of listening in. I am the customer success manager here at Phunware and for Norfolk Southern.
Perfect. Thank you. You know what? So, of course, thanks everybody jumping on here and to really put the pieces together for us, right, Benita? To kick this off, I think it's a good understanding of why we're all here, and that is really to get a better understanding of why Norfolk Southern went with the route with Phunware and really what that journey was. I know I put some questions into the invitation there, so I'll kind of kick it off and then really turn it over to Stephen and you, Benita, to put that story together. So, Benita, I think a good place to start is maybe what was the journey when deciding to go with Phunware? Like, what were some of the key drivers there?
So I'll say that the journey included us coming together with the key stakeholders first and identifying or really understanding what the vision was for the new HQ. And so, I mentioned helping them put together that strategy. So we sat together in several visioning sessions. And out of that, I came up with a 5-pillar strategy for technology. So that those 5 pillars were at the foundation of our technology strategy. And for me, that meant that anything we decided to do had to fit into those pillars, right? It had to align with those objectives. And so there was a lot around unique amenities and collaboration and inclusivity and seamless technology and flexibility and sustainability, and so we really wanted to have a staple to drive the employee experience in the building. And so we wanted to have this employee experience mobile application. And so we kind of started with knowing that's what we wanted to do. No one knows that those were our objectives. And of course, we had several partners at the table, several consultants, and we also wanted to make sure that we were partnering with someone who was not as brand new to this as we were, who had experience, right? Who could take our key objectives and help us bring them to life. We talked with several people in the space. We did several interviews, and really what drove us to decide to go with Phunware over some of the other key players was just the experience in the space. Coming the closest to being able to meet the requirements and the needs that we laid out. And also, Phunware really showed up more open to different kind of technologies, with us. And I don't know how deeply all the different technical items that we have going on in the building, but it was more about coming to the table and being willing to figure it out with us. I'm a person that's not, I don't really take the answer no easily. I am like, no, you mean no right now, but we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So that was really important. And I think that we found very early on that Phunware had a very strong technical team in the discussions that we were having with them. I mean, it was right out of the bat up front. They brought their key technical players to the table. And we really appreciated that. We really appreciated the fact that alongside the sales aspect of it, we got that strong technical presence up front. So that was important to us too. And that just goes back to having that security that we were partnering with someone that actually did have the experience in the space. So hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Stephen, anything, other than that there?
Just curious. So when you did your evaluation against Phunware, I mean, they're a little unique in this space. Who were you comparing them against?
Ooh. And it's been probably over 3 years.
Wow, back then, because that's one of the things. I mean, there's a lot of point solutions out there, right? I was just curious, were you comparing them to like other, like just kind of space management, space booking type solutions, or were you comparing them to other like enterprise mobile application development style companies?
I would have to say that we probably at that time were having to compare them with integrators. There were not a lot of people that were, specializing in the workplace mobile applications, but there were some integrators who could kind of help put it together. So we were, if I'm remembering correctly, we were kind of looking at them alongside some system integrators who had some experience in the smart building, smart workplace environment. I remember at that time, maybe iOffice popped out. Heck, we went to Siemens and we talked with them. I should have pulled some notes up on that.
That's fine. No, it's good. It gives me an idea of kind of who you were comparing them to. And then the other thing was, did Phunware help you select the back end applications that you were integrating with, or did you kind of already figure out, hey, we're Microsoft here, we're going to use this for or for space booking, we're going to use this for environmental controls, like all those different applications behind the scenes? Was it all kind of done together, or was that handled under different silos, and then Phunware was having to figure out how to integrate it together? What was y'all's strategy around that?
So they did help us figure out how to integrate it together, but as far as what we wanted for the integration, that was kind of driven by us. And I will tell you, we heard throughout the course of the project that we were probably one of the more hands-on partners that anyone had ever had experience with working with. There's probably a little bit of me working alongside them. So, we had already selected our UC platform, right? And that was going to be Microsoft. And, another thing that we were doing with our smart building project was making the transition to soft phones. I mean, that was another key technology concept, was the idea that everything was seamless and we were going to be Wi-Fi first. So we were kind of making some decisions, some technical decisions in parallel to what we were doing with Phunware. So it's kind of like, hey, again, this is going to be our UC platform, or, we're Office 365 shop, and, this is what we're going to have to continue to integrate with on the back end. And so we come and say, if we have a meeting module in the app, are you, what does this look like? Can you integrate with Office 365? And we want to have the ability to ensure that, folks can see the availability for the meeting participants. And we also are going to have these panels on the outside of the door, and those are going to tie back to our Office 365 system. So we really need to make sure it all integrates for one seamless experience. Same thing with smart parking. We kind of went out and found a partner there. And that was another hard one for us because there wasn't really anything that existed in the way that we needed it. So we kind of had to go do the work there to figure out, how we could make this smart parking idea come to life. And once we figured that out, Phunware helped us to ensure that we could integrate it with the app. So they, it was really us saying, hey, this is who the partner is. Can we get you in a meeting with them to understand the needs between both parties to figure out if we can make this work or not? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Because that was something I was curious about, the journey. It sounds like they were kind of with you through each of those steps along the way. And it sounds like you were actually your own consultant in a lot of these things, where you were going out and doing some research and finding
Yeah,
working.
Yeah, it's good that our actual consultant is not on the call, because we were, and a lot of people say that, and that is not a shady comment, but you're right.
But y'all did hire a consultant, but you ended up doing a lot of the research, it sounds like, yourself as well.
We did. And again, it was for more of the technical pieces that, just didn't exist in the way we needed to implement them, right? It just were a few pieces that were really custom. And I'll give you an example of that. For our parking system, we wanted it to be completely closed off. So we weren't willing to integrate with a system, that, already provided parking if they couldn't close it off to, Norfolk Southern employees only. So we had to figure out how to do that. And then, of course, if we wanted to close it off to our employees only, then that's got to integrate into our access and identity management system. And so we had to figure out, that was kind of a requirement and a hard stop for us. So we kind of went and figured out how to make that work. And again, Phunware, They just stayed by our side the entire time. I think we drove
Well,
them crazy a bit.
no, and I think that was one of the more intriguing integration there was the parking site. In fact, that's what really got my attention on that, and the importance to separate, right, the employee from a visitor. So I think that was definitely a huge win, right, for both.
Oh yeah, my CIO, when we turned it on, my CIO, he goes, Anita, I didn't think it was gonna work. And I said, really? He said, I'm impressed. I told you we were gonna do it.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was reading the questions here. So you mentioned one of the questions I had was like what you were trying to achieve. It sounds like you mentioned employee experience, you mentioned sustainability. So what was like from, who were those stakeholders that you were meeting with? It sounded like the CIO was involved, but who was kind of driving this desire, right? And then what was the outcome of which they were trying to achieve? Because I mean, this wasn't a small investment, right? You could have built a building, had a lot of cool stuff, not had a mobile app, not had smart parking, right? Um, I was just kind of curious on like why they invested, what they were trying to achieve from the outcome, and do you feel like it was achieved, or are the things that adoption's a challenge in some places? Just kind of help me understand that outcome based.
Sure. So you asked about those stakeholders and who they were. So for this project, there was a core team of folks who were put together to kind of make all the, I don't want to say make all the decisions, but they kind of drove the design aspect of our building and the core, the key objectives and the desired outcomes from the building perspective. And at the forefront of that was our chief transformation officer. And so our CTO, she's got HR under her. She's got, of course, IT. She's got PR. And I say that because, it was really her charge from the employee perspective to make sure that with this new building, we ensured that we kept the employee experience at the forefront of it. That was really important to her. She knew that in bringing this new HQ to Atlanta, we were going to be putting ourselves, right next to a lot of key competitors. But we're going to have to figure out how to set ourselves apart. And our campus was just another way to not only set ourselves apart and attract in new talent, but retain the talent we had. Right. There were a lot of people who made the transition down here. We wanted to make sure that we, built a building that they felt like they wanted to stay in and that they felt like they were proud of. So that was a key objective of hers. I'll also say that overall, Norfolk Southern, we are going through just a very massive digital transformation right now as a whole. And, we are really positioning ourselves to be this technology forward company across the board in every aspect of everything that we do. So it was just very natural to make sure that our campus design spoke to that as well. Right. So we wanted to take the risk. We wanted to be innovative. We wanted to be creative from the technology perspective, because it just aligned to that tech forward principle that we have for Norfolk Southern overall.
Thank you.
And I feel like I'm missing out on the second half of your question. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I mean, I guess the second half was, do you feel like, it sounded like your CIO said, yes, you're doing a good job. Like, obviously COVID changes a lot, right? But do you feel like people are engaging and using it the way that you had designed, that it was like people said, yes, I would invest in this 100 times over, right? This was totally worth it at the end of the day.
Yes, absolutely. We talk about it quite frequently and talk about, those 5 pillars and those 5 key objectives from the technical perspective, and just seeing, really being able to see how our objectives were met with the way that we see folks interacting throughout the building, right? We see them the way that we see them used in the collaborative spaces, and the way that technology drives their experience, the way that the technology is driving the hybrid experience, the way it's driving productivity. We see that. So we definitely do feel like those objectives were met. And back to Terry reading my tagline, we definitely do see the return on value, right? Which was important to us. And that was, I won't say it was a shift, but it was important to me to put value kind of on a pedestal, right? Not just the ROI in the traditional sense, right? But what are our key values, and are we getting the return there as well? And we can see that. And, we've heard it from our employees, and, we've seen the appreciation for the new technology. And I mean, I think that adoption has been great. I mean, just from the mobile app alone, when we rolled it out, we had, the Smart Campus has a little over 3,000 people in it right now. Within that first week, we were well over 2,000 people. And with this, and that spoke volumes to us, just because, Norfolk Southern is this traditional company with so much history, right? Everything's just like, it's trained. And for our workforce to make such a quick transition and adopt to something so easily, because not only did they install it, but we could see that they were using some of the key features too. Now we kind of tripped them up, with parking. It's just like, you better get this app or you can't park. So that was by design.
Yeah.
Drive the adoption, but they are persistent folks, and so again, just to have that level of adoption, within the very first week of rolling it out, it was big for us. I mean, we did this in the middle of a pandemic, so.
Wow, that is extremely impressive overall. I mean, you definitely pushed the limits. I mean, I haven't heard of many that have pushed the limits to how you've done it. So that's extremely, extremely impressive. And they're pretty smart on the parking thing, right? That is a driver to use the app, right? You got to find that hook.
They're like, is there another way to park?
No.
No, for free.
So how did you? So two questions here to get it. Like, how did you find Phunware, right? And if you were to do it again, right, who would you look to for this type of solution, whether it's consulting or bringing it all together? And because this is something I'm interested in, and I'll kind of give you some examples, right? Would you look towards kind of the facilities, MEP, architectural, JLL, CBRE type companies to help you through this journey? Are you looking more at the high-end IT integrators who may have like some IoT practice, or are you looking at more of the facility IT collaboration, security providers of the space, right? Or the consultant who the same consultant who would design like your AV and your scheduling panels and all that stuff you mentioned. Like, which one of those routes would you have taken through a buyer's journey of thinking like, here's who I would envision like helping me through this process? And how did you find Phunware to begin with? Because 3 years ago, I mean, a lot of things were different 3 years ago, obviously.
Yes. So it was actually one of our consultants that kind of put a bug in our ear to say, hey, you need to look at Phunware. And I think back then, and Terry, if I'm wrong in saying this, please forgive me, but I think back then, the way it was kind of described to us is that, Phunware did a lot of work for some of those other, big maybe app companies, or, bigger vendors. So we just hadn't heard a lot about them. And so it was kind of, our one of our consultants that just kind of said, you need to look into Phunware. They've got a lot of experience here, and they partner with a lot of people to kind of make sure it gets done. Now, one thing that we did not have early on, which would, to your question, sorry, teams. To your question of, if we had to do it all over again, I think that I would start with a very strong MSI. We did not start with that. And that is why, fortunately, I'm technical enough to say, like, there's going to be a missing link here, or we need to make sure this system integrates in this way. And these are all the checks and balances. But, I'm not perfect at it. And, there was a lot of gotchas, there are still a lot of gotchas. And you want to have that expertise, and, you want to be able to say, hey, this is what we envision. How do we do it? So for me, if I had to do it all over again, I would put my focus on bringing in a very strong MSI first, because even in my opinion, that person is going to then know, okay, here's where you need the Phunwares of the world, right? So they can really, to me, drive all those decisions and all those different partnerships and all those different integrations. And we didn't start with that. And so if I had to do it all over again, I would start down that path first. I think that was a key piece that, if we had it, I think, I probably have a little bit more hair than I have right now, a few less grays, for sure.
Well, that's so. Thank you. That makes sense, right? Makes perfect sense. So I want to be respectful of time, and I've gotten everything that I need out of this and more. So I don't know if Terry, you want to close out or anything, but I just wanted Benita to tell you thank you again for taking this time. And it's not always easy to be, have questions fired upon like that. But obviously, you did a fantastic job, and it's really helped me to understand why you did it, how you did it, and what the outcome was, which is important to understand for me, right? If we want to say this is an area that we want to, invest in heavily, we need to understand companies like you, who are the profile of companies that we work with, right? Which is very large enterprise. Are they really doing this? Is it really worth it? Is it just talk, or is it happening? And to see that it's really happening is very impactful to our decision. So thank you for that.
No problem. Yeah, again, it was very important to set those objectives early on and ensure that everything we decided to implement, every solution we decided to put in place aligned to those objectives and those values. Because to your point of, is it worth it? It depends on how you define it depends on how you define value. And this, smart building, smart tech, prop tech, it is this exciting industry that is still growing. There's a little bit of everything out there. So if you don't have a solid strategy, if you don't have objectives that you stick to, you may try to go after everything, and you could end up in a situation where it wasn't worth it, right? You don't have that return on your value or your investment either. So that was very important to us to hold ourselves to that and start there, and not, again, I always tell people, don't go after technology for the sake of technology, right? You need to make sure that you are implementing meaningful solutions, and you need to make sure that you understand what's meaningful to you and your company and your employees, and your bottom line. So yeah, that was extremely important.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's such a great fit here too, right? It's all about, the employee or the customer experience. And Benita, you said that, quite a few times during this call. And I think that when we hold the same values, and we're going down this journey together, it makes it stronger and more workable. So, Benita and Stephen said it best there, your time is appreciated. I appreciate you putting the pieces together, and I'll be following you on LinkedIn. But Stephen, thank you so much, for the interest here and the intriguing questions too. I think it did a great framework here. And what I'll do is I'll follow up with both of you. Dylan, thanks there for, jumping on and listening. And I will wish everybody a good morning here and a fantastic weekend. We never get enough. And Benita, sounds like you might need a couple days break.
Just a few.
Just a few. All right. I'll listen. Have a fantastic Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. And I'll look for an email follow-up from me.
Absolutely. See y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.